I am so honored to be here. Really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who has come. And I'm excited to share with you about what Tornado Talk is doing. I'm going to go through and just kind of let you know a little bit more about who we are and what we do and who am I and all that kind of stuff. And I look forward to any questions that you have at the end. But first of all, I am Jen Naramore with Tornado Talk. I'm going to present a little bit more about who we are and then about where we're going here with a virtual tornado memorial project. Who am I? Who is this person that's talking to you? And what is Tornado Talk? So I'm a radio broadcaster. I've been on hundreds of radio stations throughout my career doing daily forecasts and severe weather coverage. When I worked at the Weather Channel, I actually was on WOWO radio there in Fort Wayne, 1190 AM. I've been on numerous stations across the country, and currently I run a load of about 60 to 70 cities around the country and broadcast mainly the daily forecast, a little bit of severe weather as well. I'm also a contributor to the New Alabama Weather Network, which is a 24/7 stream. And I produce their daily newsletter and briefing and also some general admin work. I'm also a panelist on the Weather Brains podcast, which is the longest running weather podcast. I joined that crew in 2020. And I'm the owner of Tornado Talk. And I put a little heart there next to Tornado Talk because Tornado Talk is my heart. We are a website dedicated to preserving tornado history. So I'm going to share my sound here real quick so I can play this little video here for you so you know a little bit more about who Tornado Talk is.
Okay, it's just right now at Craw Products headed in towards Pampa. At Craw Products, just hit it.
All right, that's a little bit about who we are. And I want to just give you kind of an overview of where we started. We created a podcast back in 2016, did 36 episodes, which are all archived on our YouTube channel. And in 2017, toward the end of the year, my partner, who's the owner of the Storm Report, said, you know what, I think I'm going to step away. But I had already gotten hooked on the tornado history. I was the one who did all the research and did a lot of the storytelling and the interviews, and I'd really fall in love with telling these stories. So I took over the brand and started doing an On This Day blog. My goal was to find a tornado for every day of the year, which obviously is very easy to do, and I wanted to write a summary about those events. In 2020, I had almost decided just to step away from Tornado Talk because it had gotten to be a lot for me to do. And then, of course, we were all stuck at home in 2020. And we started a little server, a chat server, so we could talk to others about weather and history and tornadoes. And I found a group of really amazing young people, college students, students who were in high school who really loved telling these stories and talking about tornado history. And a couple of them are still with me and they are helping me on these projects. And for the next couple of years, we started doing in-depth narratives. A lot of the footage that you saw there in that video came from some of the analysis that we did on these different events, including the April 27th, 2011 super outbreak. And then in 2023, 24, we could travel again. So we started traveling and visited a lot of places to do research for the 50th anniversary of the April 3rd and 4th, 1974 super outbreak. We went to history centers, libraries, genealogy centers. We met survivors, city leaders all throughout the country, Alabama, through Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and just made a lot of great contacts and really just learned so much and found a wealth of information at all of these wonderful places and found people that really loved what we were doing. And so that was really a turning point for us in our writing and our research and where Tornado Talk was going to be going to next. And so 2024 and moving into the future here, what we've learned is that over the past few years is just how deeply these stories matter to people. And we've received countless emails from folks thanking us, saying, "Hey, thank you so much for sharing the stories of our family members." And we had this email that came in several years ago. George Butcher is my great grandfather. My dad told me a story and I had to look up more information. Thank you for telling the stories of my great grandfather. And George Butcher was in the tornado in Murfreesboro, Illinois. It was an F4, December 18th, 1957. And he had a daughter that was seriously hurt, a son who was not injured, but he lost his wife and 3 children. And this photo was taken and put in the local newspaper, and it really just showed the epitome of the grief and shock when a tornado goes through. And for many families, it means so much just to simply see their relative's name and experience remembered, and it's not just reduced to a statistic. And so since 2023, we've traveled, met people face to face, and that truth has come into even sharper focus. We've sat with survivors who still carry the weight of their losses decades later, and some have never told their story before until they could find a safe place to do so. And one moment that stands out to me happened last year. I went to Murphy, North Carolina, and I had a tornado talk with the mayor. I know the mayor. He is the owner of the radio station I am on there, WKRK. And we got together and decided, hey, let's get people together and see if we could, just talk about what happened in Murphy. They were hit in April 3rd, 1974 with an F4 tornado, and we went to the museum and a couple came, Frank and Shirley Blair. And at the time, they were living in Murphy. They had a 2-year-old daughter, Sabrina, and Shirley was 9 months pregnant. And Frank recalled how they sheltered in the bathroom as the storm closed in, and he hesitated, quite a bit during the interview as the emotions were really overwhelming him. And Shirley, his wife of 53 years, would fill in the details. And she described the 3 of them huddled in the bathtub as the train sound grew louder. The tornado struck and the house began to spin. And Sabrina, who was clinging to her mom just desperately. And Shirley looked at me and she showed me a scar on her chin where Sabrina's head had struck her before the winds pulled the little girl from her arms. And the whole family was thrown nearly 150 feet into a creek. Frank had regained consciousness. He was pinned under debris, and both he and Shirley were badly injured. Sabrina tragically was killed, and Shirley later delivered a son. They named him Franklin, and he only survived 1 day. And the storm also destroyed Frank's mother, her name was Lillian, her trailer, and she was killed as well. And she lived about 4 miles to the east of her son. And the Blairs spent weeks in the hospital. They recovered from their injuries and were just trying to get over the heartbreak of losing 3 loved ones. And Shirley told me that her faith and the thought of Lillian, her mother-in-law, caring for Sabrina and Franklin in heaven, that carried her through all these years. And also that same night, there was another 2-year-old who was killed. His name was Jamie Acevedo. His family lived in a trailer close to where Frank's mother, Lillian, had been. And Jamie's mom, her name was Betty. I received an email from Betty's daughter who shared her mother's contact information. And when I called, Betty had first seemed very hesitant to talk to me. And she was kind of caught off guard by all the memories and, why was I calling? And then we spoke about the 74 tornado and how we were honoring the lives lost and having this tornado talk. And she said, that is the one that killed my baby. And at first, she didn't think that she could face being part of our program. And we got off the phone and then she called me back and she goes, I'm going to come to your program. And so just hearing the Blair story and then connecting with the family of little Jamie Acevedo just really brought to home just how deeply these tornadoes mark people's lives and really had me kind of focusing in on why do we remember? And, decades have passed since that April night in 1974, but the grief and memories remain close to the surface. Families still long for their loved ones to be remembered, not just as statistics in a record book, but as real people whose lives mattered. And that's why remembering tornado history is so important. It's first and foremost about the people. Lives were cut short, mothers, fathers, children, neighbors, coworkers, and each of those names deserve to be remembered. And looking back keeps their stories alive and reminds us that behind every statistic, our families and communities forever changed. It matters as well for historians and for genealogists. For historians, tornadoes reveal how communities face crisis, rebuilt, how they adapted. And for genealogists, they bring meaning to family records, explaining the sudden deaths, relocations, changes in property. Remembering turns a simple date in a book into a story of resilience and loss. And there's another reason that we remember, and that's for the meteorology community, for the weather enterprise. Remembering past tornadoes provides lessons that drive progress. And each event teaches us something about forecasting, about warnings, about how to communicate, and about community response. And by keeping the memories alive, knowledge that can save lives in the future. So that meeting in Murphy had a really huge impact on me. And Kate, if we have issues with my internet, let me know. I just got a little unstable message there. Hopefully we're still hanging in there. But the meeting in Murphy solidified something for me, the need for a virtual tornado memorial to honor the lives lost. I left with a very full heart and this clear sense of purpose. I want to gather the names of those killed and document their stories and sit with survivors so they know that someone cares. And someone cares about their loss. Someone wants to make sure that their loved ones are remembered. So how many more families are still waiting to take that first step toward healing? My hope is to be there to help them move forward by listening, by remembering, and by ensuring that people behind these tragedies are never forgotten. So from that meeting and just a lot of prayer and talking to those who are helping me with this project, the Virtual Tornado Memorial Project was born. We have been preserving tornado history. As you saw in our timeline for the past several years, our website is filled with detailed narratives that bring these events to life. And after years of research and all the conversations that we've already had with families and survivors, we knew it was time to take the next step. And that's why we're going to embark upon this project. The idea of a memorial is simple but powerful. Merriam-Webster defines it as something that serves to keep alive the memory of a person or event. And that's exactly our vision, to keep alive the memory of those who have been lost to tornadoes across the United States. Based on our research, at least 22,000 lives have been taken by tornadoes throughout documented history. And I have a good feeling here that that number is low, but that is my estimate based on doing some research. And that is someone's son, daughter, parent, neighbor, friend. And we want to know their names, share their stories, and honor their memory. We have already written over 550 tornado summaries, digging into the meteorology and the impacts and the human stories behind each event. And now we want to be applying what we learned there, that same expertise, to create this memorial experience. And we want to do more than just collect the data. We want to tell the story. Who are the people lost, but who are the survivors? What was the damage to the communities? What were the recovery efforts? And the moments of heroism as well in some of the darkest hours. And this project also has a practical side. We'll be gathering social science and disaster epidemiology information that can be shared with the National Weather Service and other agencies. And those insights can improve warnings, communication, safety measures, and making communities more resilient in the future too. And the vision is to build an interactive, multi-layered memorial. Our vision is to build this searchable database of names and stories, detailed event summaries. We have want engaging story maps and other features that will bring the histories to life. And this will allow people not only to learn about the tornadoes, but also to connect with the individuals and communities that were marked by them. This is going to be a multi-year effort. In fact, I have a feeling this is going to be what I do for the rest of my life. And it's based on a simple conviction: these lives mattered, and remembering them can bring healing to families, understanding to historians and genealogists, and life-saving knowledge to the meteorology community. So I did a thing back in June, and what I'm doing right now, I became a nomad. I am so passionate about this project, I decided to change my life. So for years, I joked around as we started traveling. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get an RV and hit the road. And I've always loved traveling and doing research and meeting people. And so in June of this year, I took that step of faith and I sold my house. I donated most of my belongings and I committed to a life on the road full time. My goal is to travel to history centers, libraries, communities tied to tornado history. I started this process back in the latter half of August. My house in Ohio closed on August 29th, and I've been on the move ever since. And I'm currently in Alabama. I went to the National Weather Association conference in Huntsville, and I'm now spending time in Birmingham working with my colleagues at the Alabama Weather Network. And so, before I decided to do this and become a nomad, I would have to leave my house. It was an empty house, and rush through and research and try to squeeze in as much as I could in a short trip. Now I can settle into one place for weeks at a time. And if I need to be in Wichita or Raleigh, I can stay for a month and take my time and gather the details needed to meet people where they are, listen to their stories, and make sure their history is preserved as well. I can go sit on the floor of a history center or a library and go through all the books I want to and really try to find all this information, because it's going to take a while to find 22,000 names. Of course, I could do it from home and, get on ancestry.com and do all the research, but there are things that are not digitized, and I want to be where the history is. So, how do I make this work? People have been asking me, Jen, what are you doing? How are you actually supporting yourself while living on the road? And the short answer is I balance the work that pays the bills with the work that fuels my passion. So Tornado Talk itself is supported through Patreon. We have folks that give monthly or yearly, and we share the updates and stories and give them a little extras. And some people support us through PayPal or Venmo. We decided to keep Tornado Talk as like a small LLC instead of going nonprofit. So that way we can protect the brand and then keep full creative control of how we tell the stories. The money that comes in helps cover things like our website and admin costs and maybe a little bit of travel, but it doesn't support me personally. I still do that through my radio job because I can do that from anywhere. That's the cool part. I can take my microphone that I'm talking on and just do my radio job from anywhere, and also my work with Alabama Weather Network. And now that I'm living on the road, I can weave the travel itself into the project. So I'm going to be going straight to the archives, meeting survivors, gathering stories that we need for the memorial. And my hope is that eventually Tornado Talk will eventually become self-sustaining. But for now, I just wanted you to know how it all works. I'm open to, if folks have questions. I'm not asking for support. I just wanted you all to see the heart behind the project. I will do whatever I can to try to make this project work. So what I'm going to do now is give you a quick peek into, we are on the very basics of this project. And so we are just now starting to use ArcGIS mapping. We are going back into and kind of restructuring some of our old summaries. And so we look back on a tornado from April 9th, 1999 that hit Blue Ash, Ohio. It was an F4, had a 10-mile path, 65 injuries, and there were 4 fatalities. And so I'm going to try to pull this up. Hopefully this switches right. And this is our Blue Ash article. What I really want to focus in then is on this map. This is called ArcGIS. And what our goal is to look at the tornado path and put points on the map. And we want to really try to make this more of an interactive experience. This is our old mapping down here. Pretty slick map, but it's not interactive. You can click on it and you kind of highlight it here and zoom in, but you can't really see much in terms of what happened along the path. And so we're going to be building from here. The red line is actually the official path from the National Weather Service. And, the National Weather Service is amazing, but they are limited on what they can do when these tornadoes happen and they're trying to go out and survey and they put their information in. And so we use this as a building point of, putting the path. It started here and it ended here. But as you start digging into the details and going down rabbit holes, you can find in newspaper accounts, interviews, where the damage occurred. And so our goal is to give the bigger picture of where things happened. And as you guys have probably known, if you've done any digging at all in the history books, there are things that get missed, and there are a lot of tornadoes of the past that probably have gone undocumented, and we want to know those as well. But I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. What we've done is highlighted some areas on the map. So our goal is to kind of click on something, and then it shows the location, the Blue Ash Industrial Park, and then there's a photo. And this is some of the damage that occurred there. On the red markers, that is the name of one of the fatalities. His name was Charles Smith. He was age of 40, and he actually died in his car on Interstate 71. And then there were four total fatalities. Jacqueline Cook was in her home, age 52, and then her husband Lee was 53. And then there was one other fatality in their car on Interstate 275, Donald Lewis. And so this is just one way that we are hoping to show what happened along the path. And people can go, okay, the tornado started here and it ended here, and what happened? So let me pull up another little marker here. This is the Montgomery Community Baptist Church that was hit. So I'm going to make this screen bigger just so you guys can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to again click on this little button here. And then you can see this is at Mariette Drive. This is damage to a home there. That's from newspapers.com. And then again, here is let's go back over here. There's the church, the Montgomery Community Baptist Church. So again, guys, this is very, very bare bones. We are just now getting started with this project, and we've got a lot of work to do. And right now it's me and one other guy who's 100% in, and he has a full-time job. He is a GIS analyst. And so we are both working full-time jobs and doing this because we are passionate about doing this project. And so how can you help? Well, I need information. I think this is going to be a crowdsource effort. My goal is to try to talk to as many people as possible, especially those who are connected to genealogy, because the people, genealogists, historians, librarians, people who can put me in contact with survivors, and we can find out who were the people in the communities impacted. And I want to know the names of everyone, but I want to know their full name. And what's their surname? Were they a junior? Were they a senior? What is their age? Some people have sent us death records to actually show my family member, this is what it said in their death record, that, they died in a tornado. The locations of where they were killed, that's important for historical facts, as you saw in the map. Where we had our markers was a little bit different than where the National Weather Service has their markers. And so it's not to show that the National Weather Service is wrong. It's just to correct the record, because, they can only do so much. And a lot of times they are not going back, and they don't have the time to go back into the historical records. I want to know the life details of, if it's your family member or a friend. Some people have shared photos with us, and that's one aspect of the memorial that's going to be very important, is to include photos of the family. We had a kid who wrote a couple of months ago that his mom had died in a tornado, and he was an infant and was injured, but he and his brother, his twin, survived. And he goes, I did not have any information of what happened. I can't find any information. Can you help me? And then I was able to get some information to him. And then he sent me a picture of his mom when he was a baby. And it was just so amazing. So we're looking for photos of the people, but also damaged photos if people have them or damaged details. We need to make sure we have the sources of everything because it's important for copyright, and just make sure we give proper credit. And we need to make sure that if you do share something with us, that we do have your permission to use it on the virtual tornado memorial. So we certainly need your help. Again, it's a crowdsource effort that, and this is a huge undertaking, but I really think it's something that's important. Tornadoes they change your life so quickly. And, you know, death is tragic regardless. But there's something about the tornado. It's one of nature's most fascinating and dangerous phenomenon. It happens so fast and it can leave such a lasting mark. And it's our goal that we can remember the people who have been impacted in the communities and we can share their lives. So, Kate, that is my presentation. I would love to hear from people and see if they have questions about what I've talked about and all that stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have a few questions for you. So,
Yay!
let's see. Um, so how do you begin the process when you're gathering information to verify that historical data? What's the starting point
That's
for
a great
you?
question. That's awesome. There's a couple of ways that we start. A lot of the tornadoes are documented already from the National Weather Service. They have a huge database in the Storm Prediction Center. And so they have done this since 1950 is when the official records began. And so we can go in and we can grab those tornadoes, and we can have the starting point. Now, there's a lot of information that's still missing, but we do have at least a starting point. But one of the biggest ways that we have is from a gentleman. His name is Thomas Gruzoulis, and he is my hero. And forgive me if I drop off the microphone real quick here. I want to show you this book. This is called Significant Tornadoes. Okay. Thomas Gruzoulis, and he's writing actually two books now, the complement to this one, but he went back and did what I'm doing back in the 80s. He went through microfilm after microfilm and traveled for 3 years, and he found a lot of tornadoes and documented them, uh, and and gave us this amazing book. And so I've actually talked to him. I've met him. It's amazing to meet your hero. And I told him, I said, Tom, I could not do what I'm doing if you had not done what you did. And so that is our other starting point. And so we have all of the tornadoes, we have all of the information, the statistics, but the stories we do not have. And so that's where we get started. We start with the statistics, and then we start digging, and we go through newspapers, whether they're newspapers.com or actually going through the microfilm, because some newspapers are not, some of those really local ones are still not digitized. Ancestry.com, Google searches, going to the history centers and what have you. So we just kind of build our research from there.
Sounds good. So you already mentioned this a little bit, but our next question was about the kinds of sources that you find most valuable. So along with newspapers, what are some others that you've used?
The local libraries are amazing. If I could have a library card to every library, I would. And they're just amazing, a wealth of information. And just going through history books, sometimes you will find information if you're doing, the history of Allen County, and you can go and you can find all kinds of information. Online, ancestry.com is invaluable. And so I do use Find a Grave is another source that's amazing to find the people. And because if we can't find a photo of the person, we will at least include in a lot of our narratives a copy of the headstone. And it helps us correct the record too if people have found that information and crowdsource that. Going to city centers, going to courthouses when we've actually been able to get out, and and go to places, that was invaluable. Newspaper offices have been great, to actually get the physical paper. I'm trying to think here. Of course, from the weather perspective, it's using the National Weather Service. They have summary pages on a lot of these different events. And so we can get some information there, kind of the bare bones of what happened and damaged photos. But social media has been very good as well, because we promote on social media and people will write back and say, I lived through this, or I lost a friend, and then
Mhm.
we can talk to folks that way too. So we try to go with as many sources as possible.
Thank you. And then looks like we have one more question. So, um, has there been one so far that's been the most impactful to research, maybe more difficult, or um, what would you say to that?
They're all so like I get very um I get I throw into every one of them my full heart. It's very
Hmm.
difficult. I've really been attached to the Frank and Shirley story. I think that's had the one of the biggest impacts personally because I got to sit with them and they had never shared their story ever. After 50 years, they had never shared their story and they trusted me to share something that was so heartbreaking. I think one of the stories that probably got me wanting to continue to do this came during the podcast days. We told the story of the Gerald, Texas F5. It's one of the most, destructive tornadoes, and it was slow moving and it sat over a neighborhood. And if you were not in your basement, you did not survive. And there was a woman that wanted to talk to us, and her brother and his family were killed, and she was very emotional, and some of the details that she gave was just really awful, and my heart just absolutely broke for her. And so I think that really I think I knew I wanted to do more back in 2016, almost 10 years ago, but I didn't really know what my vision was. And it's neat to kind of see how, that really I think was a starting point of, wow, that was she wanted to share, and I think it brought her some healing, but it was so hard for her to do so. And so I think that that's kind of spearheaded me into this process. But every story to me, and the guys will tell you like, oh, Jen's she's down the rabbit hole again. I look for every detail I can. Every story means something to me.
Well, thank you so much. I did want to mention that our email is in the chat. It's genealogy@acpl.info. So if anybody would like a copy of the chat, or if anybody has any additional questions, please contact us there. And thank you so much for your time and sharing such great information about the project. So we appreciated
Yeah.
learning more.
Oh, you bet. And I just saw from Paula in here. She said my mother-in-law survived the 1973 outbreak. Her mother was the only killed in Nelson County, Kentucky. So a family genealogy and reference of papers in the area we have. That would be amazing to have that information. So my email is memorial@tornadotalk.com. So that will be very important there, Kate, to share that. And that should be on
Yeah,
the handout that I gave you. But all of
I'll
our
stick
information,
that here in the chat as well so people can grab that from there too to
yeah,
send you a note.
that would be great. Memorial@tornadotalk.com is how we're going to funnel all the information. So, Paula, thank you for sharing that. That would be very important. I have found a lot of information through the genealogy papers. I am not as well versed on looking through genealogy material, so I could always use some pointers on how to do that. If there is like some kind of a webinar or something that I could learn a little bit more about going through some of that, but I have found some information through that as well. And so, but that would be wonderful. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and thank you again for presenting this evening.
Thank you, Kate, for having me.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.